This show is brought to you by Podetize, podcast hosting and done-for-you production services that get you heard by more of your ideal listeners. Visit podetize.com to book a free strategy call. That's PODETIZE.com.
Welcome to Care More, Be Better, a podcast for people like you who care about the social impact of conscious companies and everyday heroes. Hear inspiring stories from those who put people and planet before profit and personal gain. You'll learn how you can make a difference, vote with your dollars, and get involved today. Here's your host, Karina Belizzi.
Hello, fellow do-gooders and friends. I'm your host, Karina Belizzi, an activist who's passionate about social impact and building a better, more sustainable future. Every week, I invite you to care a little bit more so that together we can all be a little better and create that better world. So today, I am thrilled to be joined by a friend in podcasting who's also itching to make the world a better place, Abi Green. Abi is the funniest girl she's ever met, the eternal camp counselor, enthusiastic mom, world conqueror, lawyer, thrifting fanatic, progressive political, know-it-all, Culinary MacGuyver, and proud feminist with disabilities. She also has a podcast of her own called Sex, Politics, and Bacon. Abi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Well,
Yay!
We're finally doing it. We've tried to arrange this for some time. I think you were sidelined for a bit because your husband was busy with the Olympics.
Yes. So he does news radio for you youngins out there, what podcasting used to be.
Traditional broadcasting, I think we call it, right?
Traditional broadcasting. Yeah. And so he got some extra shifts, which is wonderful. But with the time difference, with the fact that the Olympics is practically 24 hours a day, I mean, there's no time for anything else, but that's over now.
Yeah. So I'd just love for you to tell us a little bit about your podcast, Sex, Politics, and Bacon. What birthed this baby? What are you doing with the show?
Sure. I'd love to talk about it. So if anyone's looking for it, you want to look on Apple Podcasts, all those places for Sex, Politics, and Bacon. That's the best way to find it. There's a lot of sex out there. You got to add the comma. And the idea really came out of what are my three favorite things to discuss. Number one, sex, not just, sure, the act and all of that, but how about talking about the wage gap or about trans rights or other things of that nature? You know, when it really comes down to it, when you talk about Supreme Court, when you talk about a whole bunch of things that actually has everything to do with your sex or with the lack of knowledge of your sex. And, you know, ultimately, how did I become a mother? You know, no secrets there, right? That is what makes babies. When it comes to politics, you know, if I had my non-branding mind on, I would probably say something more like social justice. If we really want to make the world a better place, we're going to have to learn about what's going on in politics. And I really want to make topics that a lot of people say, politics, gross, accessible to everyone, and especially women and mothers or parents, I should say. We have every reason to want to lean in and learn about what's going on. And I believe if we do it the right way, we won't be fighting with each other about silly things and making politics such an icky place. And then finally, bacon. It is very much my favorite food. It always has been since before it was cool. It actually was the title of my first email from my husband to me on Match.com. And since it's actually my child's middle name. So bacon is number one, talking about my favorite food, cooking in general, all that good stuff, but also parenting and my obsession with my son.
Well, I love that. And I would just love to learn a little bit more about this obsession with bacon. So where did that start?
Well, I've just always loved the food. I'll say that. And it is very useful, believe it or not. I had a adoptive grandma kind of thing, but a woman I thought of as my grandmother. If you ever got something hurt or you got a splinter when you were a kid, she would put bacon on it. She'd put bacon on it and then wrap it around because the salt would pull out the foreign object or the glass or whatever was in there. So it was kind of always around. I think it's also a good example of something that a lot of people just love. There's something about it that's just fun and like, yeah, it's really good. And then beyond that, I've just seen it become this like cult following, when I did have my child and name him Bacon. I mean, I've gotten bacon gum, bacon, diapers. You can only imagine how many things are out there. But when I first decided that I was done being single and I wanted to try to find someone to spend my life with, I wrote up what I thought was a very funny post for eHarmony or Match.com. I forget which one I was using at that time. And my platonic male roommate said to me, "It's all about bacon. Like you can't do that. You just sound like a big fat fatty." Literally is what he said. And I said, "But it's funny because it was like, I like to go out and eat bacon. And then sometimes we'll come home. Don't worry. We have bacon at home." I thought it was funny. And he said, I think you're going to, maybe people are going to miss the point and the humor of it. So I said, "Okay, you're a single man. I guess I'll listen to you." So I went through and took all the bacon mentions out of my profile, put it back up. And 6 days later, I got an email from a very nice man and the subject line was bacon. And I said, "Oh no, I didn't take it all out. Oh my gosh." And I went back and looked and there was bacon not mentioned anywhere in my profile. And I wrote to this man and said, "Why did you say bacon?" And he said, "Because it's the greatest food ever. Why wouldn't you put bacon as the subject of an email?"
So that was meant to
And
be.
we've been together 12 years.
That was meant to be.
So he has a shirt he wears that says, "You had me at bacon." Because just the idea that I was like, see, this is who I was supposed to find. I showed him the old profile. He did think it was hysterical. So ultimately I did attract who I needed to.
Right. Well, that's awesome. So let's talk for a moment about your mission to make the world a better place in small and large ways.
Mhm.
And in particular, as somebody who lives with a disability and is working to really make sure that we have a more accessible life as well.
Mhm.
So I'd love for you to talk about what it is that you're doing and how you're getting this message out into the world, aside from also podcasting.
Yes. Well, for starters, another, when it said political know-it-all, I've been doing political campaigns almost since birth, but really since I was about 16 years old. Back in 2001, I was in a car accident that several surgeries later led to a fused ankle. I gained weight when I was pregnant. Anyway, a lot of pain that has just gotten worse over the last 20 years. I'm 41 now, so it's been about half my life. And a lot of the organizing, the political strategy, the stuff I really love and what I believe is my calling wasn't really accessible to me because it means getting on planes. And no matter what, every disabled person knows this. When you go on an airplane, you're going to walk a couple miles. Like there's just no way to avoid it. And yes, there are wheelchairs and there's all other things, but there's also just understanding your limitations. And it was the first time I really decided to go and get the disability parking. Like I had always sort of said, yeah, I'm disabled, but not that bad. I don't really need that stuff, while working for disabled people organization and advocating for them before Congress, but I still couldn't quite do it for myself and put it out there. So I'd sort of resigned myself to that. I've got to find another way to sort of work. But then COVID happened and almost every job now has become virtual. And so what has been really eye-opening and interesting to me at this moment when it comes to accessibility is so many things, jobs, previous bosses who said, "No, this can't be virtual. No, you've got to fly out here. No, you've got to carry that super heavy computer all the way to Slovakia."
Right.
That's very important. Actually, a lot can be done virtually. A lot should be done virtually. So what I'm doing at the moment is, as I re-enter the campaign season for 2022, I'm really trying to make sure that at all points, as they're hiring, as they're thinking about jobs, as they're thinking about where to put people in leadership roles and how to roll out events, so many different decisions that need to be made, do it with not just the able-bodied people in mind. And err on the side of making it too accessible because there's no problem with that. And I also think when populations have felt otherized or disenfranchised or oppressed or whatever, have felt yucky, I'll just say that, to get them back again, you need to offer an invitation. It's not as simple as, look, we threw it up on a website, but really engaging with those communities and asking, what do they want to talk about? How do they look at life differently? And not just make it lip service. So I'm really trying to do that.
Well, I mean, you speak to a couple of reasons that I've taken the time to do things like transcribe all of my episodes. And when it comes to putting my podcasts up on my website, ensuring that I do tagging for each photo so that somebody who is sight impaired can still understand all of the things that I've worked to put out there. And even just thinking about our digital world in that way and working to make everything as accessible as possible across different abilities, I think is important because again, we're working hard to get our messages out there through this platform of podcasting. I know that you and I met on social audio on Clubhouse, where Clubhouse specifically has developed strategies and even just the standard operating procedures of being on Clubhouse to announce who you are when you speak and then to say who you were as you're exiting the stage. All of these things to try and make the platform more accessible to a broader array of people if they're sight impaired or if they're hearing impaired. And
Mhm.
those things are just really, I think, good for us to keep in mind as we develop new technological solutions to reach more people. And also as we consider who we employ, how we employ, and the accommodations we make for communities around the globe. I mean, I worked for years and years in an office that was unwilling to let a lot of work go virtual. And since then, of course, they've had to make a lot of
Mhm.
changes to let people work in a remote way. The reality is, technology has offered us all sorts of solutions to do that, and we just need to embrace them.
I totally agree. And I think you can't do everything. So I know it can be overwhelming, right? No, it's like, oh, I'm supposed to do that. And like, I don't have a ramp at my house. I mean, there's so many things. But if you just think in the most simple way of connecting with people, asking them, yeah, is this accessible to you? Does that make sense? Is this going to work? And really listening to the answer, when people really are used to just not being thought of specifically.
Mhm.
And so I just discussing it. And I even say to people, in a lot of context, there's a lot of things on social media, that are for women, and that's great. But whenever I go in those rooms, I say, is this just for women? Are trans women welcome? Are non-binary people welcome? And the answer, it doesn't have to be yes or no, right? It can be whatever the answer is. But if the answer is that's not really where this is, make sure you have a place that is available to them. So saying to someone, no, some things we just can't work with the accessibility, but here's another organization or another meeting, or we'll tack something on. Just having that thought, putting that parking lot out there, having it not only just quite logistically helps more, but the feeling that it gives even to able-bodied people of, right, we're all human. We need to come at this from a place of trying to work together, not let me point out what you're doing wrong or what you're unable to do.
Or how you're different.
Right.
And just saying, "Oh, well, this is other," and not addressing
Hmm.
it. So, yeah, I completely agree. I know that you do a lot specifically in the world of politics. I mean, sex, bacon, and politics.
Yes.
So, let's talk for a moment about what you're presently working on, the initiatives that you're hoping to get into the world, whether even it's just, get out the vote. Like, what is it that you're working to do presently?
Yes. Well, the short answer, if this audience only gets one answer, it's vote, vote, make sure you vote, and then get more people to vote and vote. So since I was a wee little feminist, I have been very interested in politics. Growing up in New Hampshire, you are one of the first primary states, or the first primary state, and a ton of effort and energy and focus is put on these tiny little towns, otherwise seemingly in the middle of nowhere. So basically, since I can remember, every 2 and 4 years, I kind of dive back into campaigns. They're really not jobs that last in between. You kind of just jump in, do a ton of work, get somebody elected or don't, and then, you leave. And my main job has always been just getting out the vote. It is as simple as that. I organize people to organize people to organize people to go vote. Obviously, the job has changed dramatically due to technological advances, changes in protocols, COVID. You can only imagine. While it sounds simple, it doesn't mean it's easy. Yes, go vote, but also, and especially you can imagine if anyone's paying attention in 2022 right now, there are a lot of restrictive laws around people being able to register to vote, being able to use mail-in ballots or other things, obviously going back to our accessibility conversation. But right at this moment, I am in the process of applying to jobs on campaigns. So it's very much like summer camp. Like you come back and you're like, okay, where you been for 2 years? What you been up to? What do you have now to offer us? And where are we going to put you? So I've done everything from local all the way up to presidential. And at the current moment, I'm being a lawyer and having focused a lot on election law, social justice law, law and society, all those kind of things in law school. I'm really hoping to do voter protection. It's going to be essential this year. Even if every leader smartens up and does everything right, it's still going to be a very difficult season, purely because of just how much organizing is needed. So that's what I'm in. I am a Democrat and very proud. But what I love about just getting people to vote is it's nonpartisan.
Right.
There are many people that are being disenfranchised. There are many, there's many challenging populations out there, a lot of things we could talk about for days, but still, there are still a ton of people that just don't vote. So I'm just going to go find them.
Right. Let's talk about why people don't vote. I mean, I think you've probably heard many, many reasons. Some of the primary reasons I've heard is that my vote doesn't count where I live. Like either they live in a state that always goes blue or in a state that always goes red. And so they choose not to vote because their vote doesn't feel like it matters given their political leaning. Another reason I've heard is that they just don't have faith in the political system anymore. They feel like their vote doesn't really matter in the face of everything else that's going on. And so, what do you say to these people to help them engage or re engage with politics after potentially having stepped out?
It's an excellent question. And a lot of what I'm trying to do with my podcast in season 2, because I've brought in someone very similar to your example. Her name is Carrie Lewis, K-Lou, and she is a salty New England broad from Massachusetts and does not want to talk about politics. And I like to point out to her, doesn't have to, because it's a very social justice, very blue state. But same thing. Why does my vote matter? All of that. Well, for starters, if you just want to talk about, I think what you were inferring probably was the presidential race or congressionals. Yes, a lot of voting at that level has to do with party, and some elections feel predetermined. Sure, I'll give you that. But until recently, and I'm just going to go back to like before 2016, because that kind of changed everything, more than half of the elected offices in America were unopposed. So sure, we can talk about who's voting for president and whether those votes matter, but what about your school board? What about your county commissioner? What about all these other things that are so integral and actually in many ways have more of a chance to change your life for the better than a presidential person ever could, because they're so close to your needs, your community. Quite literally, they're representing fewer people. So you are a bigger deal to them. And the second thing I would say about that is that it was impossible to elect a Black man until we did. New Hampshire was never, when I started, it was because my friend grabbed me in math class and said, hey, can you go to my mom's rally? She's running for governor of the state of New Hampshire. And I literally said, women can't be governor of New Hampshire because no woman ever had. Well, she did win governor. And now she's one of the longest sitting senators ever. And until recently, both senators, the members of Congress, and the governor were all female. I mean, it doesn't happen until it does. And I don't want people to feel guilty if they haven't so far, or overwhelmed or intimidated. The whole point of democracy is you can do whatever you want, but don't think that it's the nightly news or even the political parties who decide whether your vote matters. It absolutely matters locally. And especially if you're turned off, a lot of people are just turned off by the partisanship, blame that person. No, you blame them. Locally, it really doesn't come to that.
Right.
It is far less about partisanship when you're talking about your area.
Right.
And one of the Republican strategists from several decades ago said, I would rather have 40 school board member seats in this country than the presidential seat for our party, because they can do more. Because if you control what's in schools, you control the message, you control what people are learning. So find a way to engage, and you will find that the large, vast majority of leaders and people that take government roles are not crooks. They're good people. They're underpaid. They're underappreciated, and they're just trying to do a good job.
Right. Well, I think it's easy to assume when we see a political system that is so, well, it's a little bit I don't even know how to put it. It's like we're watching mini battles all the time. That's how it is
Yeah.
positioned to feel. It's like Mitch McConnell against this person or that person.
Mhm.
And so we see the theater of politics. That's what
Yes.
mostly
Yes.
we see. And so it's easy to start to make assumptions about how politics is on every level. But to your point,
Mhm.
if you go to your local city hall meetings, you'll see a completely different scope of the
Mhm.
political system. And, I heard something said in a number of different ways over the years, but basically just this frustration with the fact that we have this two-party system and a desire to get to a space where we could have room for more than that, to where we could have people who are independent or libertarian or Green Party or, whatever that political party was called, actually enter more of the central main stage. The comment that was kind of thrown back in response to that by a political science professor friend of mine was that you have to lay the groundwork at the local level first. You have to gain momentum. You then have seats in the House of Representatives and then climb up to the Senate and to the point where now this third party is more of an equal party. I don't think that that's necessarily 100% of the solution. I'm going to be bringing on a guest in the near future who's talking specifically about a different type of voting system as a whole, so that it's not simply, you have two people that you're voting for, or that it goes more the way it would if you were trying to vote in a new sheriff or somebody working as a
Mhm.
judge or something to that effect, where the person with the majority vote essentially gets in that slot as opposed to something different. So I wonder if you have comments or thoughts specific to our present voting system and changes that you'd like to see.
Sure. Oh boy, you don't have enough
I don't have
time,
enough time.
like in your life, to hear all that I
Okay.
have to say. But yes, this is something I've been very interested in for a very long time. I went to Northeastern University and Northeastern Law School, and at university, halfway through, you have to do this big research paper, and I did mine on the 2000 election. If you recall, that was a big lawsuit that ended up before the Supreme Court. And I thought of, 5 different scenarios of if we counted votes this way, if we did it this way, if we did it that way. I've learned a lot since then. So I'm not even going to say what my conclusion was then because I don't agree with it anymore. But to start with the party idea, our country was set up to have two parties. The benefits to two parties is it's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward, this one or that one, and it moves relatively quickly. It's a little bit easier to get to consensus. If you look at a country like Germany post World War II, they really wanted to embrace multiple parties and think about more specific issues. And so they really set up their system to have at least 3, if not more, dogs in the fight, if you will, real people in there. I don't know that that's realistic in America anytime soon. And I'll say this because right now, let's just pretend everybody falls on, Democrat or Republican side. When you look at the quote unquote 50-50 Senate, so we have 50 senators that are Republican, 50 that are Democrat, and one tiebreaker that is the vice president, and she is a Democrat, so therefore it wouldn't be. Although those are equal number of representatives, the Democrats represent 30 million more people than the Republicans. So I would almost argue that the multiple parties or more specific parties, so there could be a Green Party or something like that. It's almost like most people are already over in that Democratic space. And I hear from independents all the time, I'm not a Democrat. That's great. If it's a party system, you have to pick one. And I think it's more likely that something like a progressive caucus or something just a little more fringe within the general Democratic Party would be far more realistic than 3 even close to equal parties, precisely for that reason. It takes like 100 years to build it up, and that's just not how our system was created. And feeling like it's so messy and we're doing this all weird, I agree with everything, and America is very far from perfect, but we're really trying. We're really are, and we've been able to do it in a way that I don't think any other country really has. And I always love the quote, democracy is the worst idea except for all the others.
The worst idea, except for all the others. Well, I love that. The person I'm going to be interviewing in a few weeks' time is Aaron Hamlin. He's the executive director of the Center for Election Science, and they're pushing for this idea of approval voting. So I'll be digging into that a little bit deeper, but I really, really appreciate the perspective because I think
Yeah.
it's a frustrating system. You might have an idea that's different than the mainstream and really, really want to get engaged with having your Green Party candidate or having your independent candidate or having your libertarian candidate, like be able to run the race and end up at that pinnacle of success. But to that point, I mean, how long have women been in politics? We still haven't had a woman president, right? So like,
Right.
let's be real. These things, they don't happen overnight, especially when you have a two-party system. I think, you'll remember the 2016 election. The thing that surprised me at that time, not that Trump won as much as the fact that so many people were throwing the excuse out that, oh, well, I don't want somebody who basically has a uterus in control of the
Yeah.
nuclear arsenal because she's going to have a mood swing and we're going to lose, the Pacific Rim or something.
Right. Again, it's all about sex. It's all about, not having a penis. You clearly can't do the job. Obviously.
So we're in a different space. We have a vice president who's a woman for the first time. Like her or not, I think that's progress. I think that's a good thing. It doesn't, I don't care what your politics are. You see a woman in that second to highest office in the United States, and it opens up a world of possibility for young girls out there. They might even consider now entering a world of politics or looking up to a young person of color, a woman who's, she's not 60 or 70. She's, she looks closer to me in so many ways. It makes it feel more attainable. Like if I dreamed of being in the White House, which mind you, I never dream of being in the White House, then that would feel really good to me. So I just wonder what your thoughts are about where we are right now, given that we still have a dramatic minority of representation of women in politics. Like, where do you see us heading in the next 5 years? Let's keep it on the horizon.
Well, just to bring up something that's coming up soon, I'm not sure how soon this airs, but the State of the Union is coming up on Tuesday. And it's also really the start of the midterm election because although voting has already started in Texas, that's when the polls close. And precisely what you said. I think that when you've been in politics for the long haul, for longer periods of time, you don't as much say, why can't we just do this? But you do have to celebrate every seemingly other small win or you do just things moving in the right direction. And I think what I've learned being married to a journalist is definitely what an integral role journalists play in politics. They have to because they have resources, know-how, freedom in a way that no politicians can. So not only is it about who's talking, but who's analyzing and discussing and reporting on that talking. And so when I'm having an event, if this goes, and you're welcome to come, 8 p.m. on Tuesday, we're going to do a watch party. I and my friends are it's like the Grammys or the Oscars, and we play bingo, like, oh, they mentioned immigrants. Haha, look, I've got the bingo card, and we drink wine and it's fun. But on top of which, exactly what you said, we are going to look at a white man talking the State of the Union, which we've seen, a couple times before. But sitting right behind him is a grandmother. And I even have her Christmas card. The woman has like 9,000 grandkids, Nancy Pelosi. She's the first female Speaker of the House. Again, like you said, like her, not like her, she's still the first one to do it. She's doing something right to get to that position because many women have tried. Same with Kamala Harris, a woman of color. I think especially Indian populations, that has never been something that has been represented in the United States. And being a woman, and as she calls herself, a mamala. So we've got a mom and a grandma and a mamala. And then I really, really love the coverage, for instance, on MSNBC right now. So then after that, I'm going to hear from a gay Jewish woman, Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid, who came up through the Freddie Gray Baltimore riots, and Nicole Wallace, who worked for W. Bush in the White House as a communications director, but is no longer considers herself Republican. And most of these people are moms. Like the idea that I, at this moment, can sit down, hear what the president say, and then listen to super smart people on TV who are mothers. They're not going to sugarcoat or say like, that sounds like a great idea. They actually know how the rubber hits the road. How is this going to affect me and my kids and my family? And to be in that space when especially women are the majority of the population in the world. And if you throw kids into that group too, we truly are the largest population. Those are the opinions I want to hear. That's something to celebrate. That's something to say, look at this. We don't have to listen to Walter Cronkite forever. Yeah, he had lots of great ideas, sure, but he still was a man. And so I think that one of the things you talked about earlier about people who don't vote is because they've lost the hope. And it's one of those things, if you completely disengage from something, you're not going to see the incremental changes. You're not going to, I don't think most people noticed that we had never had a female governor when they were 16. I did. It bothered me. I thought that your mom used to be a teacher. Teachers can't be a governor. And then what do you know? She went on to be senator. Most people don't notice that or see it. Or like I said before, invited to come and look, check out these awesome women. Even if you don't like politics, go celebrate these awesome women who are kicking butt in their field. That can only help.
Well, I love that, Abby. I just, I feel so enthralled to be able to have this conversation. And now you've basically lit the fire under my tush to get this podcast out on Monday. So it may just have to go as a bonus show. Yeah.
That's fine. No pressure. Also, we'll be doing the same around the January 6th hearings. I think they're going to be prime time. They're going to be literally produced like a Netflix binge worthy show. So the more that we can say people just lean in enough to learn, get into it in the same way you get into Scandal, but also like, it's going to be okay. We don't have to be upset about it. So just really making it accessible and making it real to people. So there'll be opportunities.
Well, that's great. So I want to offer you the floor. If there's a question that I haven't asked that you wish I had, or something that you just like to leave our audience with, what would that be?
Sure. So in the United States, and I think around the world, because of the effect that the US just has on culture, news, all of it, right? We're kind of like arrogant teenagers. Americans are like, we've been doing this for 5 minutes. We totally have it all figured out, la, la, la. And I think that the last few years between COVID, between what happened with the 2016 election, I think a lot of us feel really politically traumatized when we saw what could happen, when we saw what happened on January 6th last year. And I completely understand when you have a trauma, stepping back, getting away from it and getting your space and doing your processing. But I also think that if we don't, as Americans or as people, lean in to find out what happened on January 6th, I think we're not going to be able to heal from it. I think it's really important that we know what happens, because this will be the first time, I think, in American history, as far as I can tell, where there will be congressional hearings, there'll be prime time, and the people asking the questions will actually know the answers to every single question. It's not like Watergate, where there was a gotcha moment or some found evidence because of cell phones, because of just people recording themselves and putting them on the internet. We pretty much know, they will know every single minute of what happened during that time when they do these congressional questions. So the question will not be what happened really in our minds. The question will be, are you going to tell the truth right now? And the whole world's here to see. There will be shocking moments in a way, but the worst is over. We already know what happened. And I really believe as we lean in and hear the stories of that day and leading up to that day, we're also going to hear about hundreds of people who said no, I'm not doing this. No, I'm not going to let that happen. Still some bad things happen, but tons of people were in places to prevent that. And they deserve to be celebrated. And we deserve to say, there are bad actors out there, but the majority of people out there are good people and tried to do their job and keep everybody safe. So I urge people to just pay attention a little bit. You do not need to watch 24 hours of news. There's no need for a 24-hour news cycle, but just engage a little bit on some of these issues, because especially around sort of January 6th election stuff, as a lawyer, someone who formerly worked at the Southern District of New York, we're about to see a lot of justice being served. It feels late. It won't feel like enough. Nothing will bring back the trauma that we all suffered, but it still is some rectifying. It still is some form of healing so that we can move on and build that hope. So know that while bad things happen, I really think the last 4 years or so have been an aberration. And that time's over now. And now we can feel hopeful knowing that so many people in this situation did the right thing.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I think it's just important that we keep our hearts and our minds wide open when it comes to the world of politics. Really less us and them and more, hey, let's get the vote out. Let's engage on these topics. Let's talk about what our differences are. Let's build a world where it's okay to have a differing opinion and where you're not just seeing this inflammatory us versus them perspective on social spaces. Because I think ultimately, we have more in common than we have that differs with people that sit across the aisle from us. And we're not going to get important work done unless we collaborate. And part of collaboration is communication, and part of communication is collaboration. You go right back and forth from one to the other, right?
Absolutely. And I think when you do find someone, whether it's online, in person, that really disagrees, or they're wearing a t-shirt and you're about to make all these assumptions about them, before you do that, if you can find a way to connect with them and their humanity, it can make such a difference.
Yeah.
If they are screaming about something that's going on, just saying to them, hey, how you doing? That must be so hard for you, even if you think they're crazy. Connect with them as humans, because I think a lot of people who are really upset right now are just screaming, I'm traumatized, I need help. I'm traumatized, I need help. It just sounds a little different when they say it.
Right. Well, and if you're always just thinking red team, blue team, red pill, blue pill, are you actually really connecting, conversing, and talking through the issues that we all face? So I think that's important to note too. Well, Abby, thank you so much for joining me today. Now it's time for that simple ask. All you have to do is share this podcast with friends in your community. Register to vote. Get out there and learn a little bit about what's happening in our political system, and make sure that your voice is heard just by voting on that election day. Be a part of primaries. Consider who you want to really champion in your neck of the woods. And understand this, you can make a difference. Thank you now and always for being a part of this pod and this community, because together we really can do so much more. We can care more and we can be better. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Care More, Be Better, a podcast for social good. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and share with your friends to help us reach more people and spread more social good.
This show is brought to you by Podetize, podcast hosting and done-for-you production services that get you heard by more of your ideal listeners. Visit podetize.com to book a free strategy call. That's PODETIZE.com.